Hello and welcome. My name is Heidi Smith and I'm the Director of Bereavement at Seasons Hospice and the Center for Grief Education and Support. And I'm glad that you're here today. My portion of this presentation is to talk about the uniqueness of our grief, especially during the holidays and during the pandemic. The first thing that I'd like to just mention is that our grief is communal. Many people are grieving. They don't understand how it's impacting their sleep and their appetite, their cognition, their mood. And so our grief is communal. It could be due to loss of social connections, traditions that we normally would have this time of year. Our finances may be different. Our housing situation may be different. For many, it's their purpose. They've lost their sense of purpose, especially during the holidays. Whether it's been they've been a caretaker for years and now they're unable to go see their person. Maybe their person has died and they, again, had been a caretaker and they're trying to really establish who are they now. For others, it's maybe they were used to reaching out and serving in our community during this time, and they're unable to do that in the same way. And so our grief is communal, and yet it's caused by very different circumstances. But to recognize that if someone seems off, if you seem off, it's probably due to the communal grief we are experiencing. Our grief is unique to each one of us, and that's due to our personality, the relationship that we had with a person, especially if that person has died. And our grief will be different than others in our household or our friend group because of our relationship and how it was different with that person. So just reminding yourself that your grief is unique to you. And depending on what the loss is, was it right now during the pandemic, has it been loss of finances, loss of trust, housing, safety, health, the ability to do things you once were able to do. So what the loss is impacts how we grieve, the intensity of that loss. Does it impact us hourly, daily, weekly, monthly? The longevity, is it just a short-term grief or will it continue to impact you long-term? Your ability to cope under duress. This might be the first grief they've ever experienced. None of us have experienced a pandemic before, especially during the holidays. But for others, if you have experienced a previous loss, you might think, you know what? I have some tools in my tool belt. I know how I coped previously, and maybe some of that will work for you now. Maybe those tools are broken and they're not currently going to be helpful to you. So finding out what coping strategies work for you during this time, what healthy coping strategies look like for you during this pandemic. Also, if you have experienced a loss in the past or grief in the past, being able to learn to share with others maybe what helped you and what's getting you through currently. That goes along with learning to communicate your feelings to others, finding a safe person. Sometimes you know that people will say, how are you? And they really don't want the answer. So finding a safe person to share your feelings with is so important. Learning to listen to others and to listen to them without judgment, right? I think most people really are doing their best right now. Again, we haven't been here before. This is uncharted territory. People are trying to navigate this and during the holidays and with their grief. And so listening without passing judgment. Also, our communication styles are different and the methods of communication are going to be different. So finding a way to communicate that is meaningful to you and is able to really relay how you're feeling is important. I think as far as this slide goes, the most important thing at the bottom is not comparing your grief, not comparing how you are coping with others, not comparing your loss. But understanding their grief is theirs, your grief is yours, and you're going to grieve in your own way. Just some suggestions. on how to get through the next few weeks. Allow yourself to feel your feelings, both good and bad. Don't shame yourself for enjoying yourself, and don't shame yourself for having tears or being sad and unable to do things that you once were able to do. Honoring your grief through naming it. Some people, if they've had a loved one die, they'll light a candle at the beginning of every day just to say, you know what, I'm acknowledging my grief. I'm acknowledging the loss of this person and the importance of this person's presence in my life in the past, and that continues. And so, finding a way to commemorate your grief, whether it's the loss of a job, but what does that look like to you? How to honor that loss and to say it's all right for me to grieve. The loss of being able to do things that you once were able to do to take care of yourself, or that you normally would do, those traditions during the holidays, naming that grief. And again, finding a way to commemorate that in some way. Be good to yourself and good to those around you, because again, nobody's been here before. You have a right to feel the way that you are feeling and to express that grief, to bring it up. Grief made public is mourning. Learning to mourn those losses is very important. And but to understand that others are grieving as well. So being good to yourself and being good to those around you. I would say that's extending yourself compassion. It's being compassionate with others, understanding they haven't been here before and neither have you. So extending yourself compassion, being patient with yourself, patient with those around you. And again, learning to communicate and understand that we're all grieving a little bit of something right now, and not to compare your grief, but to understand that everyone is doing this the best way they can. If you have questions, we hope you'll respond to this video and reach out. And again, the Center for Grief Education and Support, if you have experienced the death of someone over the holidays or before the holidays, this is your first holiday without them. On our website, we do have a Managing the Holidays with more suggestions. We also provide grief counseling for those who are grieving due to death. Be good to yourself and don't hesitate to reach out for help. Thank you.